What's up? Hey, hello everyone. Wow. So today we are here going to be talking about Survivor season 34 where Debbie was voted out. And funny fact is that Debbie was actually the third member of the jury in her first season, same as Haley and Ozzy. So everyone here is ending up in the same jury position as their first time. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and sadly, no matter what happens, this jury matchup thing will not be happening again because I don't think that anyone in the season was a fourth juror, because I believe 3 of them were actually fifth jurors. So nobody was a fourth juror, but chances are someone will be the fifth juror again. So we'll get to see how that plays out. I just think it's really interesting that there's such parallelism between all of the seasons. History repeats itself? Question mark?
Yeah, no one ended up fourth jury member their first time. So next week it'll be a brand new vote out. It's super crazy. The lighting is really bad in this room. I'm sort of sad. And it looks like I'm in a supply closet, but I'm not in a supply closet. It is very good. So Alyssa, now we can get started with the episode. We'll go in chronological order. And yeah, first, I don't know, at the top of the episode, we see sort of the aftermath from last episode where Andrea and Zeke are sort of having a fight. They're like, I really don't trust the other person. And Zeke basically says he would want to go with the majority now to stay safe because there's obviously a 6-4 majority minority that we see that's very prevalent in this episode.
Yeah. I don't really get the whole Andrea and Zeke thing. Like, betrayals happen in this game all the time, so I don't know why they're both kind of taking it very personally. So I feel like it's bad when you start letting your emotions cloud your strategic play, and I think that both Andrea and Zeke are doing that as far as their whole rivalry thing, which is really sad because they were tight on their old tribe and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I'm really glad that we see in this episode they're sort of able to put their differences aside and vote in the same way. And I think that really goes to show on Survivor, even if you don't necessarily like a person or want to work with them, that you could still vote in the same way. And it doesn't mean you have to be buddy with people. And I feel like a lot of times castaways sort of forget that you don't need to be best friends with someone to vote in the same way if it's something that's beneficial for you. And I think Sarah this episode gets a lot of really good screen time. I think Sarah just jumped in the polls. At the beginning of the episode we see Sarah talking with Zeke, and she's Sarah basically says that she wants to have Zeke on her side because Zeke opens options, and she apologizes to Zeke sorry I left you out last vote, but it's something I need to do. And I think this was the really right way for Sarah to apologize to Zeke. I know you weren't going to go home, but I couldn't tell you the plan. And I think this is how you should apologize to someone after leaving them out of a vote. And I feel like a lot of times people don't do.
People get that so wrong. It always pisses me off when people apologize incorrectly, just because I feel like an incorrect apology can totally implode your entire game, especially if you get to the final tribal council and people don't like you or don't trust you because you were a douche to them every time that you tried to apologize. And especially when the apologies actually end up making things worse. Come on, guys, use your heads.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Sarah did a really nice job. We saw a lot of Sarah this episode. So in the reward challenge, I thought this scene, so basically this challenge was when I first saw it, I was like, this was when in white collar, no collar, blue collar, Will has that that picture of him falling down the ramp, and I was like, this is the challenge of this famous picture now. I was like, LOL, that is so funny. And I mean, Debbie, she in a few episodes ago complained how she's had 6 years of gymnastics, and then she crawls across the beam. And I'm like, this is also funny.
Okay, so the thing about this challenge, there's 2 things that we have to talk about. But the first thing, Michaela had to sit out, and I'm really confused as to why no one picked Michaela for their team. just because like Michaela is a lot more athletic than like most of the people I feel like in this season, and like maybe she's not as strong in the water as she could be, but she's still like a very physically competitive player, and I feel like either team could have benefited from her presence. And I
Yeah,
feel
I
like
think
just like I don't
yeah,
understand why you pick your alliance members instead of someone who could help you win the reward.
Yeah, like that's what like Michaela says when Jeff is talking to her. She's like, people were picking their alliance members over Michaela. And I feel like so Suri was a team captain and Brad Culpepper was a team captain. I feel like Suri maybe potentially could have picked Michaela for her team, but I feel like Suri doesn't want to show favoritism maybe towards Michaela because they have the secret alliance going on, but it's more of a strategic option. Like Michaela is the odd woman out of every single alliance right now. We see later Brad and Sierra are like, Michaela's so annoying. Debbie's like, I want to vote Michaela out. But they're like, no, we have a smarter, bigger goal in mind right now. So I feel like leaving Michaela out for Suri was a strategic option, like to not show her cards. Obviously, Brad doesn't want to choose Michaela because he wouldn't want to go on a reward with her potentially. But I think in general, Michaela throwing the fit when she's not picked. She has so many times this episodes where she's cursing and her mouth is bleeped out because she's saying all these things that I think in general she's sort of having like a bad attitude this season and just the wrong demeanor. So I feel like Michaela could not win this game because she's sort of pushing people the wrong way with her attitude.
And obviously her throwing a fit led to her not being able to see the like secret advantage thing that was going on. And I said this about Zeke last week, but I feel like it's worth saying again. But like players who play like immediately, when they play back-to-back seasons, they end up making the same mistakes. And that to me just, it frustrates me a lot, especially because like I'm not exactly sure if Zeke recognized that what he was doing was a mistake, because like he was talking about it strategically and he was like, big moves are good to make, and I'd rather like go a little too early than not make a big move at all. And I was like, that's exactly what you did last time, and I feel like it's gonna come back and hurt him. And the same thing happened with Michaela, where she's being too big and too bold. And like obviously on Survivor you have to play as yourself because you can't keep up a deception, I feel like, for 39 days without it like seriously hurting your like mental health. But I feel like she's just too big and too brash, and like the same thing that hurt her last time is coming back to bite her again, and it frustrates me to see these mistakes repeated.
Yeah, I definitely feel like nobody wants to vote for someone to win the game who they dislike. And I feel like sort of Michaela doing these big, bold things like we're talking about sort of leads to people being sort of off put with her. When she calls like the rest of the people bitches for not picking her, I'm like, I mean, why would you say something like that? You want them to like you, so they want to bring you into their alliance. But if you're calling everyone bitches and like using the F word, like F this, F that, like obviously no one's going to want to pick you for their team and stuff like that. And I don't know, I was just like astounded. Michaela was sitting there and she even like, I feel like she could have seen that secret advantage when she was putting on her shoes. Like the shot was right next to her shoes. And then she didn't even get it, which we can talk about Sarah getting the advantage. But I was like, what the heck?
I feel like she just has a very one-track mind, and that came back to bite her. So before we talk about Sarah getting the secret advantage, there was another part of this challenge that was like unusual, and that was the fact that even after the challenge was officially lost, Jeff Probst asked Suri if she would like to continue on with the challenge and go across the balance beam, and she says yes. And I feel like I really liked this moment, but I also really don't like that it was kind of forced upon us, I guess. Like, I think it would have been a lot better if Suri had said herself, like, oh, I want to do this, or something like that, especially because, I don't know, they make such a big deal about how Suri is the woman who got out off her couch and came to play Survivor, but it's like she's not really good at the elements of Survivor that, like, would naturally juxtapose with getting off her couch. I feel like it's an accomplishment, obviously, to go from just being a casual fan to like being a Survivor player, like jumping off the couch or whatever. But I feel like it would have been even more of like a thing to mention if like Suri was dominating in challenges rather than like struggling every single time.
Yeah, like I really like this scene as well. I think it was a really interesting juxtaposition from Sarah looking super angry and pissed off when Zeke kept falling off of the balance beam when he went, towards when Suri was going. And like I was very intrigued as why put Suri last at this challenge, which I mean it's sort of like you I don't know. I feel like you don't want to put the weakest person last, but put them in the middle so that like if they mess up and go slow, you have people at the end that you're able to catch them up. Like in a relay race, you don't put the slowest person last. You put them like second or third.
Yeah, I feel like even putting the slowest player first is more beneficial because then you have all that time to make up like what you lost. So yeah, I didn't understand it. And I also didn't understand why Suri was like so tired. Like I get they haven't been having like a lot of food and water and stuff, but like she's never really like she hasn't had to go to tribal that often. She's gone on a lot of rewards, I feel like. So I don't understand why she was so like physically spent that she like couldn't get up off the platform.
Yeah, so like Suri was swimming and she couldn't get onto the platform. And then Sarah dives back in to help Suri. And like the music during this part, I think was so perfect. Like it sort of faded out the other team like talking, and then the music was like the main like sound you were hearing, and I was like, wow, this is a very nicely edited scene. The music flows so much. I started tearing up. I was like, this scene is so sad. And Suri kept saying like, I can't do this, I'm sorry guys. I'm like, wow. And then at the end of the challenge, Jeff repeats that this is Suri. She got off the couch to play Survivor. And then the rest of the team goes out there to help her across like the balance beam and stuff like that. And I think it was such a powerful moment. After Suri made it across the balance beam, Zeke is like, you did it. And then Suri is like, I did it. And I feel like this is very empowering for Suri to have confidence in herself to be able to do these challenges, because I feel like she is sort of self-conscious about challenges, being the weak link on the team. Suri often, like before the merge, was the one to sit out of a lot of the group challenges because, she might not be as physical as everyone else. So I really feel like completing this challenge definitely gives Suri like a lot of kudos. And she talked about her sons again during this time. Like she just wants to make them proud. Like you can do anything you set your mind to. And I like, this is all super, super good and everything, but I feel like this is dangerous for Suri. Like if I were on the tribe right now seeing this happen, I'd be like, I want to vote Suri off next because she's a 4-time player going to the end. Like Ozzy mentioned in his Ponderosa, if you're a 4-time player making it to final tribal council, no one wants to go with you because the jury would probably give this 4th-time player the win. I feel like similar to Ozzy, who has made it like 1 vote away from tribal, one, almost making it, and like stuff like that. Suri is 1 vote away in Micronesia from making final tribal council, like things like that. Suri and Ozzy are so similar. I feel like Suri it's gonna be her time soon.
I feel like also a lot of times when Survivor players like have this one goal in mind and they like devote all of their attention to it, that's when they start like slipping after they've achieved that goal. Because like you saw Joe Anglem, he was always talking about how like he wanted to see his father in Survivor, and then he got voted out right after the loved ones visit. You see like Jeff Varner, he was so blinded by his need, like I need to make the jury, that he made a really shitty move and he outed someone on national television. And it's like when you put these blinders on and you're like, I just need to finish this one challenge, I just need to prove to my sons that you can do anything, like those blinders are really not good for you in your game. So you have to learn how to either take them off or just not get them on in the first place.
Yeah, so I feel like, I don't know. I mean, honestly, like in this season, all the big names have been voted out so far. I feel like Suri is the last. like super big name player, then you have like the sort of like lesser big name player still in right now. So I feel like definitely Suri could have the target on her back. I mean, if
Yeah.
she were in final tribal council, I feel like she deserves to win the game, being the person who's got off the couch to play the game, you know?
Yeah. One thing that I thought was really interesting, after Suri did this whole like physically exhausting thing, Jeff calls in a boat so that they won't have to swim to it. And it's when going to the boat that Sarah sees the secret advantage. And a lot of people have been asking, like, if Suri didn't like almost like fail at the challenge, and if Jeff hadn't asked Suri to like if she wanted to do it and stuff, would Sarah have been able to find that secret advantage, because she wouldn't have had to like go over to the boat and she wouldn't have been at that little dock. And so
Yeah,
I feel like that's really interesting.
I think Sarah so sneakily swooped this secret advantage. There's so many S's in that sentence, but like, I feel like this is Sarah's episode. There was so much about Sarah, and it really shows like she's good at the game. I feel like Sarah has been in sort of the background thus far in the season. She hasn't gotten that much screen time, but I feel like through this episode, Sarah really comes to the forefront of maybe potential winners of the game. And I feel like, so Sarah gets this advantage. She puts it in her, like her water shoes, gets on the boat, and then later it's revealed that it is a steal a vote at tribal council. And then in a confessional, she's like, I'm going to be the first person to play this correctly. And then on Twitter, Stephen Fishback is like, like, what the heck, you know? And then Sarah's like, it actually says in the like secret advantage clue, it says stuff about Steven and stuff like that, how these people didn't play it correctly. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, why would this secret advantage clue go into so much depth about the history of the secret advantage that has never worked before, you know?
I feel like it's kind of to like make it a double-edged sword, because people always fall down on like their own pride. So I feel like it's really interesting when people like they get so cocky, and Sarah being like, oh, I'm going to be the first one to do it, and like the clue kind of leading her to that conclusion and making her be like, I gotta be the first one to do it right. And I think that's really interesting. And another note about this secret advantage, all of the vehicles that they use on Survivor, the windows are blacked out, I guess so they can't see where they're going or whatever. So since everyone else was already in the boat when Sarah like got this advantage, no one even saw her take it. And even if someone had been able to see her take it, she did it like sneakily enough.
Yeah, I thought that this was really cool. It sort of reminds me maybe like of the Kelly Wentworth swoop at the beginning of her second season. That was a nice swoop. Or like the Jeremy Idol swoop in his second season as well. So the reward challenge, we see Brad's team go on this reward. They get food and stuff like that. And I think it was really interesting. We see Brad have a sort of voiceover confessional saying, I left Troyzan and Sarah off of my team because, you know, you don't want to bring your whole freaking alliance onto the reward challenge, because that leaves everyone else back at camp able to talk. And I think this was really smart, but I feel like Brad sort of brought the people that are like higher up in his alliance and left the people who are lower in his alliance off. So, bringing Sierra, like she's super physical and great at challenges, but she's like the number 2 to Brad's number 1.
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting because, like, people always like to think that they're at the top in their alliance, but it's like the alliance hierarchy system seems really, really complicated. And I feel like kudos to Sarah for realizing that she was at the bottom of her alliance, because I feel like a lot of times the people at the bottom don't always know that they're at the bottom. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was really interesting. Brad has gotten less screen time than he has had like the past few episodes. Before pre-merge, Brad had a lot of screen time, and I feel like he's sort of falling to the back right now, which I feel like is good for him longevity-wise, because whenever people seem to get a lot of like edit and stuff like that, they usually get voted off. But I feel like winner-wise, definitely being in the forefront like might not be too good, but having less screen time and having these smart confessionals like that is something good for Brad in the long term. I feel like Brad could make it far. Immunity challenge. I think everyone cheering when Andrea dropped her pieces. I thought this was sort of like extremely rude. I mean,
it was rude.
Yeah, like I mean, you know, you don't want Andrea to win the challenge, but screaming for Troyzan and stuff like that, I don't know. Like it sort of was like off-putting for me because you're all
There's
human.
a difference between not wanting someone to win the challenge and like outright cheering when they lose. Like I feel like in like All Stars when like Sheehan won the challenge, like the above the head endurance challenge thing, and she was like, yeah, I'm so great. It's like it's really off-putting just because like you were happy for her until the moment she started like bragging. And it's like you might have been able to be happy for the other alliance until they started being shitty about it. The one thing that I thought was really interesting was that like everyone seems to be happy for Troyzan, and I was just like, is Troyzan just like their little puppy or whatever? And the analogy that I came up with my friend Emily was that Troyzan's like that uncle at your family reunion that's like not your least favorite uncle, but not like your favorite uncle either. So like it doesn't bother you when he wins something, but you're not like super excited either.
Yo, I think that analogy is like literally perfect because in my notes at Tribal Council, Troyzan is basically saying like, why disrupt the mold when you have a 6? Like, let's just keep it together. Let's make it to the 6. Then you can figure it out from there. So I feel like the difference between Troyzan and Sarah is that Troyzan is like fine with staying comfortable, fine with the 6-some, but Sarah realizes she's not at the top and wants to change that, whereas Troyzan is content. And I feel like that's the difference maybe between them. I feel like Troyzan going to the 6 as Troyzan, hoping that something happens at the 6 or something like that, I feel like being in that position, it's too late to win the game because you floated all the way to 6.
Yeah, and I feel like that's also just not a very good story to tell at like the final tribal council, like being like, oh, I got to the final 6 and then like immediately started butchering all my alliance members. That doesn't sound as good as like, oh, I orchestrated moves so that I'd be here above my alliance members or whatever.
No, yeah, 100% exactly. So Troyzan wins immunity. It's good for Troyzan and his alliance, I guess. If Andrea went home, it would have been good for my fantasy because I guessed that she'd be the one going home. But alas, we did not see that happen, which is also good because I had Andrea as my winner pick at the beginning of this season. So yeah, before Tribal Council, we can talk. I don't know. Everyone seemed very content, like, oh, we're in the right alliance of 6. We see Sierra have a confessional, like, I'm so comfortable right now. Like, we have a great 6 strong. And I feel like they repeated this so much during the episode. And, you know, I think we mentioned it earlier. It's really smart how, even though the majority dislikes Michaela, they're all annoyed with her, but they realize, like, why vote Michaela out when there are such larger threats to vote out right now?
Yeah, and I feel like that's like another thing that people sometimes get wrong. Like they always are voting for like the people that annoy them. And it's like, if someone is annoying, it is very easy to make a case to vote them out. Like even to the people like in their alliance, it can be easy to be like, oh, doesn't so-and-so like sometimes like rub you the wrong way, blah, 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 blah. And with someone who's a strategic threat, it can be a lot harder to find like the right time to vote them out or whatever, because you also need to do it with like some degree of like secrecy because you don't want them hearing about it. So
yeah, and I also feel like, you know, maybe annoying people are good to take to the end as a goat or something like that, because if nobody really likes them, nobody wants to give them the $1 million. So I think it's really good. Sarah realizes she's not at the top of the chain in the majority because they made the vote decision without her. Like they just told her, let's vote Andrea. And then Sarah realizes that she's not at the top, and she sort of brings together Zeke and Andrea, who we already mentioned don't want to work together, but they're able to put aside these differences for the vote, which I think was really good. We see Sarah talking with Zeke and then Sarah talking with Andrea, and like bringing them together to make a 6 to beat the other alliance's 6 was very, very good.
Yeah. And I feel like also good job to Suri for like, I feel like Sarah needed someone to kind of like guide her in the right direction as far as that stuff went. And like Suri did a very good job, I feel like, of setting up the reasons why Sarah wanted to flip in like a very non-confrontational way. Like they talked about Sandra doing it a lot, about how she'd like make her case, and she never raised her voice, and she was super calm. And I feel like Suri is really good at that too, where like she doesn't freak out if someone is like not listening to what she says. She just keeps talking, and either they're gonna listen or they're gonna have hell to pay. So I thought that was really good too.
Yeah, when you mentioned that like calm voice, I immediately thought of that Sandra episode, and I think that just goes to show how good of players Sandra, Suri are, because they are able to do these things so calmly. They're able to input, their thoughts and like what they want to happen without forcefully making the other person think it's my idea, but they're sort of making it like it's our idea, it's your idea, but it's me saying it to you. So I think that's something really interesting. Maybe Survivor veterans have this skill because they've played so many times, or if it's like a natural skill or something like that, it'd be interesting to like learn about, I feel like. So yeah, Debbie, we also see Debbie tell Aubrey to vote Michaela, and this is where Aubrey gives like the 2 middle fingers up to Debbie, like F you. Like I feel like during this time, Aubrey is so insightful. She makes the connection. Like Debbie reminds her of when she voted Debbie out last time. She's extremely cocky, making mistakes, and I thought that was very insightful of Aubrey to make that connection.
I feel like also the glare that she gave to the camera when like Debbie's back was turned, when she's like, "Can you believe this bitch?" And so I just think that the whole vote out was very good, and I was pleased that it went the way it did, just because like I feel like we mentioned this before, but Debbie's like one of those people that's like, you like to watch her for a little while, but then she becomes really just exhausting to watch, and it's like, it's not good TV anymore.
Yeah, like, I don't know. So I feel like this sort of brings the whole Debbie vote out about, because Aubrey tells Sarah, like, Debbie is spreading lies about you, girl. Like, we're 100% tight, but Debbie is spreading lies. And then Sarah's like, oh, hell no. Like, time to vote this girl out now. And I don't know. At Tribal Council, everyone's like, we're all 6 strong and stuff like that. And then Michaela is eating at Tribal Council. I was like, I don't know, it just goes to show how she doesn't have the decorum or like social awareness as everyone else does. I feel like doing all these things, it's just, why?
I mean, I feel like Michaela has said like she wants to play the game as Michaela, and like even she's gotten farther than she did last time, and I feel like even if she goes out, she'll have the knowledge of going out like the way she wanted to, and she's still like funny, she's sassy, and like I feel like we as viewers, we can get annoyed with Michaela or frustrated with Michaela, but we don't like dislike Michaela the way we may dislike some other people.
Yeah. So, Alyssa, if you were in Sarah's position, what would you do?
I feel like it's really easy to say what I do because I saw how it worked out, but I feel like I would definitely flip, just because Sarah still has the potential, I feel like, to make good with the 5 if she needs to, and somehow use the Debbie vote out as leverage. Or she could keep on going with like the people group where like everyone who she flipped to could take out like the bigger threats, like Brad and Sierra, who like everyone really wants to get out, but like no one really wants to make a move to get them out. But like I feel like Sarah definitely made a good move, and this is going to be like something great that she can bring up, as long as she brings it up correctly. Just because I feel like every time you flip on someone, there's a wrong way and a right way to phrase it, and then you don't want to be too flip-floppity, because then you get like Ty, where no one really wants to work with you because everyone's worried you're just going to flip.
No, yeah, 100% I agree. I feel like Sarah doing this flip because, she was voted out Kagayan because she was being wishy-washy with which side of the alliance she wanted to be on. So I really think Sarah improves from her last season because this time she wasn't so wishy-washy. She sort of kept it to herself and then made the decision. So she wasn't the one in the middle who was going to be voted out because she couldn't make her decision. And I feel like Sierra telling Sarah about, maybe a final 3 between her, Debbie, and Sarah, they're in this difficult position. Because, why leave safety if you're guaranteed maybe, a final 6, final 3 deal? But I feel like in this position, I feel like it was good Sarah made the move because making this move, you never know what's going to happen. You might not even make the final 6 with the Sierra final 3 thing going on. But I feel like making this move, it really opens up all of the alliances next episode like we see, but I feel like, everything is just so up in the open. We see everyone mention it at Tribal, the waves wash away the lines drawn in the sand. So I really feel like Sarah, depending on how she's able to maybe make amends with the Brad Sierra group and how she phrases why she did what she did to explain to them, I think it could be really good for Sarah. And I think during this time, it's really telling that Sierra leaves leaves Brad out of the final 3 deal. And I think this is really interesting because maybe it goes to show that, Sierra is really thinking out there. She doesn't want to take Brad to the end. So I'd be interested to know if Brad wants to take Sierra to the end.
I mean, I feel like when you have 2 co-leaders of alliances, it's kind of like having 2 leaders of the mafia, where they have this tenuous piece, but they both know that one of them has to go if the other one wants to have total control. So I feel like they both know if they go to Final Tribal together, it's going to be really difficult for either one of them to win because their victories are both of their victories, and it's very difficult to extricate them from each other. And I feel like it would kind of be like a Russell Haynes Parvati Shallow situation in Heroes versus Villains, where every move they made together, and that can either be a good thing or it was in Heroes versus Villains, a bad thing because neither of them won.
No, yeah, I definitely feel that. For Brad, hopefully he realizes he can't go to the end with Sierra, and we know Sierra realizes the same thing. So, that's something really big you can put on your Survivor resume. I realized, I need to take out my right-hand man, right-hand woman, but it really depends on timing. There's so much about timing in this game. When is the right time to take this person out? Because right now, they're a 2-person vote strong. Once you have one, you probably have the other. So maybe Sierra's trying to go an all-female thing because she does pick Debbie and Sarah for the final 3. So I think it'd be really interesting to see. I'm excited for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where it can go from here, especially because I feel like before they were kind of in this holding pattern where they just voted out the person they thought was the biggest threat or whatever, and a lot of times that ended up being one of the more well-known players. But now that most of the well-known players are out, they're actually going to have to start voting for the B-class Survivor players, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm really excited, like you were saying. I really feel like after this vote, I feel like the alliances aren't so set in stone, a 6-5 thing, or next week it'll be a 5-5 thing. It'll be really interesting to see if they can get a majority with 6 in this group of 10, or whether, maybe Sarah will have to play this extra vote, or idols might be played. I really feel like this vote opens sort of Pandora's box. I feel like a lot of interesting things, a lot of different votes can happen next week because, it's going to get down to the nitty-gritty. Even if you love your alliance members, in the end, if you can't beat that alliance member, bye-bye, time to vote you out. I need to work with the opposing alliance to get what I want done.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to see how all of this plays out next week. We will be podcasting again next week. And yeah, please comment down below. What would you do if you were Sarah? Do you think that she made the right choice in flipping on her alliance now? Or do you think it could have waited for later? And as always, thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. We love doing this, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, bye-bye.